Hey there, I'm Aaron, and this is Camp Peculiar, a channel for AI artists who want to make comics, graphic novels, or really any kind of visual storytelling endeavor. Speaking of, I write and art prompt the fun, the fantastic, and wonder-filled webcomic Camp Peculiar, which is entirely AI art backed. Go over to Webtoons and search for Camp Peculiar, and you can read the stories and see all the fun and wonderful artwork that goes with it. Or you know what? You can just click the description in the link below. While you're over there, check out episode or issue number 3, which is called The Cave, or The Cursed Recipe, which is 5, and then The Garden of Good Ideas, which is 13 pages long. All of these have characters in them which have to appear multiple times. And that's a little bit of a trick with AI art and with MidJourney. Being able to get the same character looking the same way with different poses, facial expressions, orientations, all those kind of things is still a little bit tricky in AI art. So in this one, the first of the videos on this subject, we're going to use one single image from MidJourney. Let's say you got a character back that you really like and you want to use it and get some mileage out of it. We're going to look at 5 different ways to use one single image so that you can get it in multiple panels or appearing on multiple pages. So here we go with tip number 1, and that is to use the image just as it is. You know, I know it doesn't seem like much of a tip, but in lieu of that, let me show you how I actually prepare an image to be used in a comic strip. You don't have to do this. This is totally optional, but generally speaking, it works better if the character is sort of on their own layer or separated. And so I'll show you how I really quickly prepare a character. First, you want to look and see if there's anything just super weird about it that you need to correct. Other than that this guy's ears don't match, which I like for this particular character, nothing there. So the next thing we're going to do is select the magic wand and then use the select subject option in the upper part of Photoshop there. You could also just manually select it if you want. Anyway, you just need to get a clean selection, and Photoshop's select subject works really well. Then I'm going to go ahead and hit Command or Control X to just see what happens when I delete it. And I can see there's part of the cheek and part of the ear that was left behind. So I'll undo that, and then I'll use the lasso tool to sort of shift using the to add to the selection, maybe get a little bit more of the ear right there, and definitely we need that cheek. And then the last thing maybe I will do is go to select, modify, expand, and we'll expand it by 2 pixels, and then I'll hit Control X, and that looks like a pretty clean selection. So I can delete that, don't need it anymore. Now my character is on its own layer. I'll just move them over here. The last thing I like to do when I'm using panels is I just create a square, rectangle, whatever shape your panel is. It can be a polygon, put a stroke around it, and then I go ahead and put the character above the panel or the artwork above the panel, and right click and select Create Clipping Mask. The character didn't appear there, he's just hiding off to the left. So if I drag him over, and that allows me to move the character around and look for interesting framing options or storytelling options for how that is going to fit in there, or you can just resize it, and anything that is outside of that shape that the clipping mask is above will not show up. So there you go. That's tip 1. See, it turned out okay. You were a little hesitant, you were a little skeptical, but it turned out just fine. And that lets us move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is to silhouette the image, and there's actually a lot of different things you can do with that, and a lot of different ways that you can silhouette an image. So here we have I think this was a ringleader or something that turned into a cowboy, just sort of a cowboy that wants to stand out. And so one of the ways to create a simple silhouette is just to go to blending options and put a color overlay over that, and that way you can get whatever color silhouette you want. An alternate way to do that would be to hit Command or Control U and then use this lightness slider here to create a silhouette that way. Worth noting, 2 more real quick tips here. Worth noting, a silhouette usually happens when the character is observing the scene, not directly a part of it. And the reason why that is because the lighting of the scene, the thing that you have your reader focusing on, the character is obviously not being affected by that lighting. That's why they're in silhouette. And so it usually works best when that character is up on a cliff looking down at something, or outside of a window, or on the edge of the scene. So moving the character so that it's sort of out of the way, tucked into the corner, observing the scene. And look, you can see if I wanted to put this character that's in silhouette over on the other side, it looks like they're facing away from the camera. Maybe that'll come up again in just a few seconds. Other really quick tip that you can do is you can just take your render, your image from MidJourney, use again Command or Control X to shift the hue to whatever color spell or light or glow that's affecting the character. Then just copy that layer, put a silhouette on top of it using one of the methods I just talked about. And then you can use the eraser or a feathered magic brush selection to sort of just highlight where that magical spell or wherever that thing might be illuminating that character. So that's sort of a silhouette with a little bit of a lighting effect in there. Hey, remember that issue we were having just a few seconds ago where I wanted to take that silhouette and put it on the right side of the frame, but then she was facing the wrong direction? Well, guess what? Tip number 3 is to use the flip horizontal or to mirror or to reverse your character. So here we have sort of a real world example where we're going to have a 3-panel comic strip. This character is going to say something in the first 2 frames, and then we want something to happen in the last frame. And to do that, we'll pretend that he's a clone. We'll go up to Edit, or however you do this in the program you're using, transform, flip horizontal. Now that character is facing the other direction. And for this one, and he's also on a clipping mask, so you can move him around without worrying what's going on. And for this one, we will also Command or Control U, and then try to get him to look like a different creature altogether. It's like his brother, his clone brother, or something like that. All right, we're already on to tip number 4, if you can believe it. And this one's a good one. Sometimes out of MidJourney, you'll get a character or something that has appendages like arms, legs, a hat, something that you can move around. And a fun thing to do is to cut those things out and put them on their own layers. So you just make a selection that looks like it's, makes sense with the body, the hairline, something like that. You can tell I already moved this hat around in a previous recording of this video in which the wrong microphone was selected. So you just need to make a selection that makes sense with the shadows and stuff to try to get it to look like it was cut kind of cleanly. All of these arms are also cut. And then you can either get rid of them. Let's do this. Group all of the items that you have cut apart into a group. And then we'll go ahead and duplicate that 3 times to get sort of 3 different panels. Okay, so there we go. We have our, this is some kind of magical robot kind of guy. And it is just kind of hanging out here. And we have it duplicated 3 times. All those are in groups so that all the body parts are, I can manipulate them, turn them on and off independently. So we'll put him in some different pose. He's trying to fool the crowd here by looking not so serious. And then he's like, ta-da! And maybe you want those to go up further so you can kind of just do that. You can also use the puppet warp tool in Photoshop to get different sort of poses or different sort of expressions. This is sort of like the cutout version of that tip. I don't know what's happened. His whole trick fell apart at the end there. Oh, you know what happened? We can use the tip from tip 3 and change body sides of his hands. That's what happened. Is the ball changed hands? We'll go to Edit, Transform, Flip, Horizontal. And there's the big trick. I think it would be funnier if 2 were actually in one spot. So he's like showing the crowd at the beginning. I'm like getting all into this right now, even though it's just an example and I shouldn't spend any time in the video doing this. It would be funnier if he's showing them at the beginning, hey, check it out. And then he obviously puts them behind his back and then they come up and he looks, he tries to fool them by looking silly. There you go. That's my non-verbal no speech thing. He's like, check it out. Ba-darm, and it switched hands. How about that? All right, the last tip, number 5, is zoom in, zoom out. Here's the image we have here. This is I think this was a milkman musician. I like the way that turned out, other than he has a little small satellite on his shoulder. But he's carrying lots of fun stuff, and I imagine whoever he's going to deliver this stuff to would be excited about it. So we have 1 image, and then we have 4 panels. And so what I'm going to do first, before I start moving these around and trying to use the same image to tell a story, is I'm going to duplicate the image a bunch of times. I'm going to duplicate it above every panel that I have created. And you should be guessing the reason why I'm doing that is so that I can create a clipping mask for it, which is what I'm going to do. So we'll go ahead and just clipping mask all of these. So already it looks a lot more fun just having the image cut by these panels. It almost feels like you could just put dialogue or notices in here or something like that. But we're going to move it around even further. So the first one, we'll sort of do our establishing shot here and make sure it fits that panel. And I'll move it all the way off to the right as if he's just entering this particular scene. And then on this panel up here on the right, we'll zoom in a little bit more on his face as if he had something to say. And then this one, we will zoom out a little bit and sort of start to sort of hint that there's something interesting about this box. Pinocchio's inside of it. That's what's interesting about it. And then last one, we'll really zoom in on this to show that this is definitely what we're talking about here. So that's one image used in 4 different panels to try to progress a story towards something of interest. Hey, I hope you found that helpful. Hopefully it encourages you to use AI art or get out there and make a comic. And you know what? If you're making a comic using AI art, leave a comment in the comment section, which is where people leave comments. Leave a comment there and let me know so that I can go read it, because I would love to do that. If you enjoy this sort of thing and want more videos on how to reliably reproduce characters, I certainly have them ready to record. So like, subscribe, do whatever you do to videos that you find helpful. And I will see you next time at Camp Peculiar.